Hello, welcome to my third video relating to the central sociological topic of socialization, this one about the development of the self. One of the most important things to happen during childhood is the development of the child's own sense of self, that is, of a distinct personal identity separate from other people and things. The newborn baby does not seem to have such a sense, and it is only through social interaction that it is acquired. The few cases of unsocialized children suggesting the lack of a recognizably human personality ensues when this normal process of interaction does not occur. There is no universally agreed definition of the self, of course, and for our purposes we may follow the pragmatic approach of the American philosopher and psychologist William James, who regarded the personal self as merely that empirical experience which gave us a sense of our own individual identity, bridged the gaps in our consciousness, as in sleep, and separated our own individual consciousness from that of others. It included the sense of our own body, family, home, clothes, possessions, and inner or subjective being. Socially, it defined who we felt we were in relationship to the people we encountered in our lives and the way in which we behaved towards them. The sociological understanding of the development of the self relies mainly on the work of two American social theorists, Charles Horton Cooley and George Herbert Mead. For Cooley, key concepts in understanding human beings were their essentially social nature and the concept that he termed the looking-glass self, the socially constructed sense of self. We were not born with the consciousness of self, but rather the sense of self emerged during early childhood in a process of growing awareness. The individual's mind, his or her consciousness, always developed in the process of communication with others and could not be disentangled from our relationships with other people. In this context, social communication was an essential condition for the emergence of self-consciousness. Thus, the young child initially experienced its world as a stream of impressions, the definition of which depended upon the developing organization of the child's mind, a process which necessarily took place in the social context of other human beings, such as close family members. Long before the child had learned to speak, it had developed a complex web of communications with these immediate others, relying on such cues as gesture, touch, tone of voice, and facial expression. Through this process, the growing child became aware both of itself and of the specific individuals in its immediate environment, its mother, father, siblings, and so on. Self-awareness and social awareness developed together. For Cooley, there could be no individual personality independent of society, no isolated self, since I only existed in association with others. It was a looking-glass self because it was reflective and emerged in interaction with others, and in particular in relationship to the judgments and evaluations of the individual which were made by those who were close to the child. We cannot see ourselves directly, but come to see ourselves in terms of our own understandings of the reactions of others to our behaviors. These understandings forming an effective mirror for our developing self-concept. From Cooley's perspective, human nature is relatively malleable and something that can change under different social conditions. Thus, whilst children develop their initial sense of self in the primary group of people who bring them up, that experience could vary enormously. Family life was normally all-enveloping, full, and intense, but it could also be either a fulfilling experience of loving security or a frustrating or tortured experience of inescapable tyranny. The individual child's growing sense of self would be shaped by this experience, whatever it happened to be. More generally, the particular nature of the growing child's experience came to embody its sense of what it was to be human. Through both observation and participation, it came to understand the roles played by the immediate others who surrounded it, the regular patterns of behavior they exhibited, and the values that motivated them. The relationships and behaviors of the primary group had a profound impact, for they were what thereafter seemed natural and normal. For good or for bad, the social bonds, values, loyalties, duties, and qualities of character expressed in this particular group were what came to be seen as human nature. This is what it emulated in others, and it formed the basis for its own sense of right and wrong. At the same time, however, the human biological endowment was constant, so there were common human instincts and emotions, and even many universal human traits that might be explained by the commonly shared experience of growing up and living in a primary group. For Cooley, it was noteworthy that despite cultural differences, human beings throughout the world commonly shared such notions as love, freedom, morality, and justice. These were not abstract concepts, however, but the particular expression of sentiments rooted in the childhood experience of a congenial family life. These sentiments came to motivate and direct human action and judgment, and on them more wide-ranging philosophical, religious, and political beliefs came to be based. The sentiments themselves were formed in a process of sympathetic and imaginative interaction with others. Many were socialized transformations of instinctual emotions. Lust became love, rage became resentment, terror became fear of disgrace and ridicule, and so on. Incidentally, for Cooley, these insights had important implications for the study of psychology, which he believed could only offer valid insights if it did not ignore the role played by social processes in the creation of human experiences and human nature. Now let's turn to George Herbert Mead. For Mead, the self comprised the individual's self-awareness and self-image. Like Cooley, he believed that it developed through social interaction. Crucially, this interaction involved both understanding the symbolic nature of much human communication and a growing understanding of the intentions of others in making particular actions. Symbolic understanding preceded learning to talk. For example, a wave of the hand is endowed with a particular cultural meaning, which the infant comes to share with its adult caregivers, but expanded greatly as the child learned how to communicate with its significant others through the use of language. Meanwhile, understanding intentionality enabled the child to anticipate a sequence of events, as in many of the games that parents played with their infants, such as covering and uncovering the face. Peekaboo is the English name for that, I think. The process of growing self-awareness through social interaction could be seen as going through a number of stages. Initially, infants had no understanding of the underlying intentions of others, nor of symbolic action. They could respond to others only by imitation. But through simple games and play, they began to see the world from the perspective of their parents and significant others. They also began to engage in role play, imagining what it would be like to be a mother, a father, a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, or whatever. This understanding involved being able to see a situation from another person's point of view, a process which eventually enabled the growing child to see themselves as others saw them, objectifying themselves, and so take the role of the other. As children got older, they also began to play complex multiplayer games such as American baseball, British rounders, or association football, in which it was necessary to see the world from the standpoint of several people at once. Finally, they came to recognize that there are widespread cultural norms and values, what Mead called the generalized other, and used these as a reference for evaluating themselves. In so doing, they internalized the abstract expectations of society as a whole. Mead also distinguished between two aspects of the self: the objective socialized me and the subjective, spontaneous, and creative I. The self was simultaneously an expression of both social interaction and individuality. There was a continued internal dialogue between our I and me, and although they were usually in balance, some individuals displayed a dominance of one or the other, either the impulsive and antisocial person who only lived for their own advantage, or the over-socialized conformist who only did what they thought others expected of them. This is a far more sociological understanding of the dynamic tension between social demands and individual desires than Freud's concept of id, ego, and superego. In terms of understanding later life, for Cooley, our understanding of who we are depends on our perceptions of how other people see and evaluate us. Are we good, skillful, attractive, and so on? These perceptions may be accurate or inaccurate, but they are what we use to evaluate ourselves. Moreover, they can change over time. Our concept of our own self is progressively shaped throughout our lives by our interactions with immediate others, and these interactions change over the course of our lives. The sense of self plays a major role in determining how we are likely to act in future social relationships. But these relationships themselves are not fixed. Leaving home and going to college or getting married are both good examples, leading to important changes in those we most immediately interact with, and therefore possible changes in our self-concept, whether for good or bad. An interesting example of the way in which the self-concept can be changed is provided by an experiment conducted by the American psychologist Edwin Ray Guthrie in the 1930s. Like many of the most interesting experiments in social psychology, this might now not receive the approval of a university ethics board. Guthrie's unwitting subject was a shy and socially awkward female student, and his accomplices were a group of college men whom he instructed to give lots of attention to the woman as if she was highly attractive, inviting her to all local social events, for example. By the end of a year of this treatment, Guthrie noted that the woman's personality seemed to have changed. She had developed the confident and easygoing manner of someone who is popular. Moreover, this new self-image continued even after the experiment was over, and the student accomplices continued to see the woman as attractive. Finally, let me note that Cooley's ideas and some of Mead's bear an obvious resemblance to those of Adam Smith in his great early work, The Theory of Moral Sentiments, published in 1759. Largely forgotten by modern readers, this work is effectively an early study of sociology, or social psychology if you prefer. Thank you for listening. If you like these videos, you're welcome to subscribe to my channel. I will try to answer any questions you may have about this video in a future one. By the way, those who want to support the development of the channel can do so through Patreon or PayPal. I'll give details below the video. If you want to click the like button, that will help me get an idea of which videos are of greatest interest to viewers. Have a good day. Oh, and I have produced earlier videos on the work of both James and Cooley, and will give the links below. Thank you.